friends. This is Corey. I just want to thank you all for joining us today for AI Teacher Growth. We have Will and Kelly here, and we're going to get started in just a second. Before we do, I just wanted again to welcome you. We've been on a journey probably about 5 years here at Rocket PD, where we've been working really closely with educators across the country on teacher evaluation. Our friend Kim Marshall, who I think might actually be on this call, has helped us run a cohort that we've been doing called Rethinking Teacher Supervision, Coaching, and Evaluation. And we've learned a lot in that process. Particularly, we've learned that educators really are hungry, right, for better coaching opportunities in their teacher evaluation process. I think a lot of folks feel like evaluations are getting bunched up toward the end of the year and they kind of fall into this compliance trap. They're not really getting enough time in their process to spend time in the classrooms doing a lot of that one-to-one coaching. A lot of folks have come to us and they've said, we agree with all of this, but we need ideas and solutions to help us think differently. Today, we're going to talk about one of those ideas and solutions. We're going to talk about what Kelly and the team in Dudley-Charlton are doing to get away from some of that compliance burden, to reduce some of that paperwork burden, and really strengthen those coaching opportunities. And so I hope you enjoy the conversation. I hope that you spend some time thinking about how this could work in your particular context. And if you have questions afterwards, we'll leave some information so that you can reach out to us and we can have some deeper conversations. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you. Kelly, good to see you. Really looking forward to today's conversation.
Nice to see you too, Corey. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Excited to jump into it. Thanks for having us. Sweet folks. Goal for today, share a little bit about the underlying philosophy regarding the new idea Corey mentioned with teacher evaluation, some of the struggles we've heard from countless conversations. We want to learn from Kelly, her wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to education evaluation. She may laugh, but that's serious. And then show a little bit about SwiftScore and what we've been building. Um, Kelly, we got the slide up here. Our dear friend,
Yes,
Kim Marshall,
who we love.
anyone we
Yep.
love who you met.
Yep.
Almost any teacher can pull off two strong lessons a year for an observation that doesn't tell us much.
Mhm.
Um, what's the problem with evaluation today, Kelly?
Oh, where do I start? Well, there's a lot of problem with evaluation. I think mm, the biggest challenge is time, is getting them done and making them not just finished, but actually effective.
Mm,
There's a lot of time constraints that we have when it comes to evaluation, depending on if you're a single administrator in a building, if you're the only person doing evaluations and you have, a larger staff. That makes it really difficult. The level of support you have in your building for the challenges that happen on a day-to-day basis makes it really difficult to get into classrooms all the time and to be able to observe and give the appropriate amount of feedback. It's really, really difficult. Another challenge that we have, like in Dudley-Charlton, it's a regional, so we have two sides to the district, two towns that pour in, and we have 7 schools with 7 different principals. Some of the schools
mm,
have APs, we have special ed coordinators, we have department heads, and we're all
mm,
doing observations and evaluations, but we're not necessarily calibrated across the district. So, a lot of principals will calibrate at their school level with their school teams, but as a district trying to provide an equitable outcome for all of our staff throughout the district, we're really not calibrated totally on that, and that makes it really difficult as well. But I would say for a system that is supposed to help move progress forward for teachers, like, that's the actual reason why we have the evaluation system is to provide feedback and to help teachers to improve their practice and their skill. That's not really happening through this process. It really does become a paperwork process. It becomes, I just need to get it in and get it done so that I've met my contractual obligations, which you'll understand if you're in a union-based state. But that makes it really difficult. And it's definitely I've just have seen throughout my career as a teacher, all the way through being an administrator, that it's just not effective in moving the needle to change mindsets or people's practice.
And that's not you alone, right? Like the
Right.
data shows that as well. I think it's something along the lines of every teacher's proficient, but students aren't learning more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what you're articulating is, you know, one of the things that, again, talking about Kim Marshall, these shows is this graph. There's all these different schools or as data points, and then there's income um, of the area, and then
Mhm.
there's performance, right? And there, usually as income increases, performance increases. But there's this
Mhm.
weird group where income is low, but performance is really high. And one of
Mhm.
those districts being in Troy, New York. And what was the difference with that school? In that district, it was good instruction was happening, right? Like
Mhm.
teachers were good. It's not that complicated. Um, Tell me a little bit about. I feel like I'm hearing two things here. It's like one is the time. It takes a long time, right? That's what you started with. But at the same time, it's not working, right?
Mhm.
Like we often hear it's time consuming and it's useless.
Mhm.
How are both of those things possible at the same time?
Mhm. Well, it's definitely time consuming. And, I hate to say, I don't think I'd use the term useless because
Mm,
it definitely helps in some ways. We are providing feedback. We are trying to use it to be effective. It's just in the overall system, when you pull back and really look at, is the system effective? You just know that it's not. When I was a principal here,
yeah,
of one of the elementary schools, I didn't have an AP. I didn't have anybody really to help at all with evaluation. And I had probably 35 professional staff to evaluate, along with maybe 10 paraprofessionals, some related service staff. And that's a lot. It's especially if you're in a place where you have a lot of, oh, sorry. If you're in a place where you have a lot of
works.
evaluations to do and not a lot of people to help you do them, it becomes overwhelming. And for people that have a lot of new staff, they generally require multiple observations per year. And
Mm,
that just makes it more difficult. So, there were years where I maybe had five new staff. Each of them had to have five observations throughout the year. So that's 25 observations just for those five staff. But I still have my additional 30 staff to do my evaluations on. So, the time crunch
right.
is definitely real. And when you're in the throes of, doing a formative assessment mid-year for your people who are non-professional status,
Yeah,
that's really hard to get everything in. And then you end up kind of crunching it because you're behind or you want to meet your deadlines. And that's
got it.
just the reality of how it goes.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it's not working because it's time consuming. Like
Right.
in some sense, and it's you have to go through these compliance systems. There are many
Mhm.
observations to be done. There are many teachers. There are not that many instructional leaders.
Mhm.
There are many other people to observe and give feedback to. And then a new fire, which comes up
Every
every
minute.
day, every minute, right? We were talking
Yep.
to a district, and they had a literal fire.
Yep.
And so we had to cancel the meeting. And so with that, it's really hard to do it well.
Yes.
Got it. Um,
Yep.
Tell me a little bit, specifically at Dudley-Charlton, is there an experience, an anecdote that pops up to you, um, where you're like, I know I can. One of the things we hear often is, you know, our instructional abilities is really strong. Like I know what next good steps are, but it's almost like there's this invisible barrier preventing me from actually moving that forward. Do you have an example of something that comes to mind for you?
Well, sometimes you just get oversaturated, if you know what I mean. If
Mm,
you're doing multiple observations in a day and you're trying
yeah,
to give feedback, like you're seeing a lot of different lessons and you want to give really meaningful feedback, but sometimes you become oversaturated and there's a point where you just can't actually think of the best way to go about your feedback or the best way to kind of couch something so that you're giving
Mm,
positive feedback, but also some things to work on. And, you really are trying to tailor the feedback to the teacher. If you really know your staff,
right.
you know how they're going to receive your feedback and what they're going to do with it. So you're really trying to do that. And I think
Hmm.
that that's what really comes out of it is, you get oversaturated with trying to think of new things, new ways to put things, or exactly how to word something. You just get stuck.
It we have this kind of dialogue internally about AI. So
Hmm.
one of the things that we're building into the tool is a chat bot that pulls from all of the observations done across the district and provides summative insights. One of the challenges with that chatbot and AI in general is, well, you want to give it a lot of data so it can be smart and contextual, right?
Hmm.
But sometimes when you give it too much data, it just kind of fries out, and
Yep.
it gets like it. I guess the human brain isn't in
Yep.
that instance very far off, right? It's like
Right.
you're gonna observe multiple classrooms in one day and then
Hmm.
have to give feedback to everyone, and you have other stuff going on. It becomes hard to even
Hmm.
succinctly put it all into words.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm,
And if you're rushing to get it done and to get it in, then that, becomes even more of a problem.
mm. So if that's the case, what is the perfect world scenario? Like, let's say we are on a different universe, alternative reality, and there they have the perfect coaching and evaluation systems in their schools, which is, of course, the first question somebody asks when they're in an alternate reality. What 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 does that look like?
In practice,
Yeah,
yeah. So, what do leaders actually want and what does that look like? I think, well, definitely we would want smaller, smaller caseloads of evaluees
sure.
because that would make things a lot easier. But, even if you had a smaller caseload, that doesn't necessarily take away the overwhelm or, if you're still going to be trying to get in multiple observations or writing multiple, pieces of feedback, and that doesn't necessarily alleviate that problem. But I think having, reasonable evaluation caseloads, having some of the work done for you, like, when I go into a classroom, typically when I would go in for an evaluation or an observation, I would take my computer in, I would sit at the back, and I would be like a court stenographer, just typing
Mm,
away everything the teacher is saying, everything the kids are doing. Because if I'm doing multiple observations, I want to have really accurate, great notes to go back to when I go to write my feedback, or I'm not going to be able to do that at a later time. So I would go in and I would do that. But by doing that, I'm not able to essentially pay attention to everything that's happening because I'm
mm,
busy with, writing everything down. I'm not interacting with kids. I'm not part of, what's going on. I'm
mm.
just kind of a shadow in the back with my computer. And that's not really, the purpose of an observation either. Like I like to interact. I like to be able to go in and to talk to the kids to see
Mm,
what they're doing, to
yeah,
see if they can articulate what's going on in the classroom. And I think that's what we need is we need time to be able to go in and be part of what's going on to do that. And then more time, I think it's less paperwork and more talking would be the
uh,
ideal situation.
mm,
Less having to sit behind the computer and do that and more face-to-face time with the teacher you're actually observing to have meaningful conversations, to give your feedback, to talk back and forth about what was happening, and have that improvement.
right. It's how can we make this more human,
Yes.
more social?
Yep.
When we did that walkthrough at your district and you went to that school, I remember there were a bunch of students who knew you and the other
Yeah.
the other folks that we were walking with, just kind of like being, hey, 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 like
Yep.
having that relationship with the students.
Going
And
to the
that was
schools is
that
my
was
favorite thing.
right. Like that was the most fun part of the day,
It was,
right? We
yes.
did beforehand, we did an amazing PD session, but
Yep.
in terms of fun, like it was kind of being in the classroom and talking to the students, right? Like
Yep.
that's
It's the best. That's the best part of any of the jobs. It's the best part.
And when it comes to having that social connection with teachers, that's what works, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
the thing that drives instruction is the meaningful, instructionally aligned conversation,
Right.
right?
And I think an important thing to remember is a lot of times we use the evaluation system for teachers who we really only give it our full attention if it's a teacher who's
Mm,
struggling. And everybody deserves
mm,
great feedback. Your high flyers, your high flyer teachers that you're not worried about, they deserve great feedback too, and they deserve to grow just as much as everybody else does. So we need to find a way to
yeah,
be able to focus on everyone, give everybody constructive feedback so that everyone can grow because your high
right.
flyers will become stagnant if they're not growing and they're not getting what they need in terms of, feedback and professional development. So that's a really important thing to remember, I think.
And then there's the mediocre middle,
Right. Everybody can
right?
grow. Everyone can grow.
Everyone can grow. I mean, especially when students need to learn more,
Right.
right? It's there's there's not like this influx of amazing teachers that we're going to have in the next few years.
Right.
I've been
We're
hearing
going in the
something
other
about
direction.
yeah, I was gonna say you like teacher retention crisis sounds
Yes, we need
you
more
know
teachers.
you're right. And so if you can't just find them, then you probably want to help coach folks to get there, right?
Right.
Hmm, interesting. So I want to ask this question, and Kelly, even before we jump into you answering it, give a little bit of background. But how do we? This is the question we've been asking ourselves, which is how do we do this? So if there's this perfect world and we're talking all the time, we're connecting with teachers, we're having conversations, they're instructionally aligned, we have the insight, we're not being oversaturated by having a million observations. But we're far from that now.
Yes.
A lot of paperwork, a lot of writing, a lot of sending feedback virtually.
Hmm.
And then as a result, mistrust between teachers and instructional leaders.
Yes.
You know, the question is like, well, how do we bridge that gap? And like, how can we drive forward what evaluation means, which is currently a fairly kind of dirty word in education, uh, in the next 5 years? Like, what, like how can we make meaningful change? And so I want to turn to your specific case study at Dudley-Charlton and the work that we've been able to do together. I don't think we even really gave you the formal introduction that you deserve. Tell us, Kelly, like what is your role at the district? We get why you care about evaluation, but tell us a little bit about your district, and
Yep.
and who
So
who Dudley-Charlton is.
So I am the assistant superintendent here in Dudley-Charlton. We are a regional district in Massachusetts. We have approximately 3,400 students. We have about 600 full-time staff, and we have 7 different buildings with 7 different principals, as I said. The middle schools and high school have APs. The elementaries, we have 4 elementary schools. They do not have APs, so they're single administrator schools. Um, and our biggest elementary school has about 450 kids. I think that he does need an AP, but that's not in the books for today. So,
Right.
he probably has, I said I had about 35 professional staff to evaluate. He probably has closer to 50. So he has about 50 plus paraprofessionals that he needs to be able to evaluate. And the only person to help him is the special ed coordinator who
Hmm,
also would really only be doing observations, not formative or summatives, and on the special education staff, which is probably about 5 of his staff members. So he
hmm,
really doesn't have a lot of support there, but has a lot of work to do with evaluation. So you can
right.
see how that would be difficult to make meaningful for him.
Yeah. Which
And
which principal is this, Kelly?
that is Peter Olson, the
Got
principal
it.
at Heritage Elementary School. And
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for him. He does a great job. He's all over that school all day, but
Right.
that doesn't give you, well, a lot of it is putting out fires and just general management. But he does do a great job, and he's all over that place. So he makes it work. But we'll look at getting him some help
Cool.
in the future.
Understood.
But it's not we're a pretty general district here. But we have had concerns about the evaluation system. We have had teachers who've brought up the inconsistency from school to school, from principal to principal, when they talk about their evaluations, and that can be a big
Mm,
problem when you are in a new union district and you're always looking for calibration and for moving people forward. And if you have people who are doing evaluations and their feedback is you did a great job, and that's the only feedback. Or I would like to see some improvements with nothing really constructive or actionable in there.
right.
But then you have people who are doing evaluations and they're giving great feedback to their teachers. That's a problem in your district because people
Mm,
talk and they know. And then, they have a leg to stand on when they want to make changes there. So it can get a little dicey with some of those things.
right. Calibration, so
Yeah.
important. I remember that was one of the first things that you shared with me. Um, that point you made about general feedback, something
Yeah.
we think a lot about. Corey and I hosted a couple PD sessions with Jean-Claude Brizard, CEO of Digital Promise.
Yeah. Oh,
One of the
yeah.
things that one of the things that he said was that just stuck with me. He said a lot of really amazing things the whole time.
Hmm.
And was, what does curiosity like look like in a student at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m.? Like, 10 p.m. probably sleep, but
Yeah.
like,
Let's hope.
like, yeah. Um, like if you're giving feedback, it's like, oh, we need more curiosity, right? And
Yes.
that's more specific than good job. It's like, cool. What does that look like?
Hmm.
And so getting to that specific feedback is so valuable. And then what's interesting to me about what you just said was the teachers who are getting that specific feedback prefer it. Like
Hmm.
that's the group that's like, haha, we get the good feedback.
Yes.
Why is that?
Probably because they feel like it's moving them forward and it's helping them grow a
Mm,
little bit. I would assume that that would be the reason. I think
yeah.
teacher evaluation doesn't have to be bad. It really doesn't. It does not have to
Mm,
be a bad thing. I do think that if we're giving more meaningful feedback, that's moving people forward and they're actually acting upon the feedback and we're following up with them, which is another, huge challenge when it comes to evaluation. But if we're
mm,
giving feedback and then following up on that feedback, it shows that we have an interest. We're taking an interest in what they're doing. We're trying to help them. We're trying to support them. And I really think that when you're giving meaningful feedback, that comes through. I think when you rush an evaluation and you're writing, you did a great job, or, something like
mm.
that, I think that message comes through too. So, it's really important with the feedback that we're giving that it's meaningful, it's actionable, and it's
Yeah.
impactful for them. And I think that they will see that and they will appreciate it.
So
Evaluation is such a loaded word, isn't it, friends?
Ah, it
it
really is.
is.
There's so much thinking around it. And I mean, most people, when they hear it, it's, ooh.
And for good reason,
Yes, but
right?
it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
I will tell you, because we were talking about Peter, we at our last admin meeting, we were talking about SwiftScore and we were kind of setting some goals around usage so that we like to, keep coming back and them giving feedback to me about SwiftScore and how they're doing it.
Yeah.
And so Peter used it a couple of times a few weeks ago, and he called me right after and he said, I just want to tell you, I love it. I love it. And
I'm
he's the one
glad.
that has the most evaluations, so I was very happy to hear that.
It's funny. I didn't know. I didn't know that story until you just shared it.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear. And I know that Chris has been using the platform
Yes.
a
Yep.
ton. And so I
Yes.
thought you were going to say Chris before, but then you said
Nope.
Peter. So it's great.
Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah,
Sometimes you
that's
just have to get them in there. Like people are resistant. But some of the principals, it's like, I don't have time to learn, this new thing and how to do
right,
this. But sometimes you just have to get them in there. And I was able to get
right.
him in there and, set a goal for him. And he was like, yep, I'm going to do it. And then as soon as he got in there and saw what it could do,
Yeah.
The proof was in the pudding for
Incredible.
him.
So tell me, Kelly, like, and then I want to talk a little bit about SwiftScore specifically. But one of the things I'm thinking about what you're saying is this concept of evaluation doesn't have to be a dirty word.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm almost imagining the teacher on the other end, sometimes when we say that, and they're like, well, it is. You know what I mean? And it has been, right? How do like,
Mhm.
like, and I think like the difference in what you're articulating and what it could be and what we want and the ways in which it doesn't have to be a dirty word is really the difference between gotcha and
Mhm.
support, right? Like if the feedback's specific to tell you you're not doing good, that no one wants that, you know?
Mhm.
If the feedback's specific because it's not to get you, but because we're going to sit down and work on this together for students. I mean, who doesn't like improving anything that they're doing? I mean, I will tell
Right.
you, like, one of the things I'm learning guitar right now. Actually, one
Yeah.
of the members of SwiftScore or one of our software engineers, a great guitarist, is teaching me guitar when we do it on like Saturday mornings. And I will say, like, he tells me feedback. He's like,
Yep.
"Oh, you put your finger here, and that's great. It's awesome." I will tell you if like you know there was a meaningful if he was gonna slap me every time I did it wrong, like I don't know if I would
Stop
like
learning
a
guitar.
guitar lesson. Yeah, probably, right?
Yep.
So, okay, amazing. So tell us a
One of
little
the things
bit.
that we
Yeah.
we haven't talked about is, and it's something that Kim Marshall had said when he was here with us in
Yeah.
Dudley-Charlton, and I thought that it was really meaningful with the other administrators was that it's giving feedback twice a year or once a year in some cases, sometimes 3 times a year, depending on your contracts and how you do evaluation is not as impactful as smaller chunks of more like mini observations going into classrooms and providing regular feedback. So it becomes less of an always I got you and more of
Mm,
I'm here to see what's going on. They start to expect the feedback and it's smaller, more manageable pieces of feedback when you're only going in for, 5 or 10 minutes at a time and then giving them some feedback and it's more regular and you can have conversations around that rather than when something is due and you're trying to crunch and get something out there and that model of doing more frequent smaller kind of check-in
mm,
visits is a little bit more effective in moving the needle with some teachers.
right. That are not even scored,
Yeah, yeah, a
you
lot of
know,
times not even scored.
not even crazy formal.
Right.
It's just like, let's just observe and talk.
Yep.
I love it. Um, One of the things that we've been working on with Kim, uh, with this exact goal in mind is, and we were able to demo when we were there in Dudley Charlton,
Hmm.
was the conversation summarizer.
Which was
And
great. Yes, that was awesome.
Kelly, tell us about that experience observing. It was Rob, right?
Bob. Yep.
Bob.
Yep.
Yes. Tell us who is Bob?
So
Why
Bob
did we
Hanna is
observe
a
him and what happened?
Bob Hanner is a fourth grade teacher at Dudley Elementary School. He's an amazing teacher. The kids absolutely love him. We came into his classroom with, I don't even know, it was like 8 adults, maybe 8 adults, which is a
Yeah, we
lot of
all walked
adults
in.
to come in the room. But the kids took it in stride. They were so great and they were so happy to have all of this adult attention in their room. So we went in with Kim. We observed Bob for a short time, probably 10 minutes, maybe.
10 minutes, if that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really was not a long time. And then we watched Kim sit down with Bob and have this coaching conversation around what we saw. They talked about what they saw. Kim asked questions. Bob answered a lot of questions that cleared up, possible misconceptions about what was happening or what his objectives were or what he was doing. And then they had the AI summarizer. So they took a look at the conversation when they were finished and they read the summary that it created for them. They both agreed that that is the conversation that they had. And then it automatically would email both of them with the follow-ups to that. And it was great to hear him actually doing the conversation with Bob, just the questions that he asked them to clear up whatever he was thinking about. And then just to hear some of his feedback, which was glowing, it was great for him. But just to see the interaction between the two of them really talking about the lesson and the whys and what
Right.
did you expect, and things like that you just don't get when you're in your office typing in your feedback and you're doing an evaluation. You don't have that. And that
Sometimes
was
we get
Yeah.
so,
that was
yeah,
definitely the most powerful
yeah.
part.
We get
I'm
so
sorry, go ahead.
focused on the evaluation piece, right?
Right.
It's like we sort of put the cart before the horse. The real beauty of this is that time spent in the classroom and that
Mhm.
conversation that's had between the teacher and the principal. And I know Kim so always says, summarize this in 150 characters, right? So it's short, it can be
Right.
digested. We can both understand what we're talking
150,
about. Yeah,
150 words.
words.
When
Excuse me.
we
Right. I'll get.
so I when we first met Kim, we had a conversation about words and characters, and I kept on making that mistake. And I was like, 150 characters. He's like, you're not going to say anything with 150
Right.
characters.
Yeah.
But sorry,
That's not a
I
lot.
should I
that's
should
like a
know that,
tweet.
by the way. He's probably told me that 110 times. I got that
Yeah.
wrong. He's gonna call me on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, I
But
mean,
I'm
that
sorry, Corey.
conversation
Yeah,
was great. And I loved that we had a lot of our principals were there to see that conversation and, to look at that. And we haven't really used that. We haven't gotten to that place yet where we're using that feature right now, but we definitely can see that being impactful in the future.
yeah.
It
So
was just a
I
great
want to
overall experience too.
was and Bob, not Rob, was an incredible teacher. And there
Yes,
really
he was.
wasn't any, concrete next step to give him. Like he
Right.
actually kind of, it was an interesting one where he kind of closed the conversation and be like, well, is there anything you want to work on? And he was like, well, here are these things I'm just kind of thinking about. And that was it,
Yep.
and because
Yep.
sometimes it is
Sometimes
just
that's it.
that, right?
Yep.
What about this question, Kelly? I mean, one of the things that we hear often is, look, evaluation is you can have it. Hey, well, like you can have as many hopes about evaluation as you want. It's still a dirty word today. And by bringing AI, do you risk just keeping it dirty and just doing it faster, right? And I
Yep.
think there's a clear path of that happening, right? If you you do an observation, you generate some feedback, and the feedback's better, but you send it to the teacher via email every time. And in the extreme case, let's say you really never sit down and talk to teachers. Um,
Mhm.
let's say you score each evaluation, you use those scores, uh, you know, punitively, maybe you blindly don't change the scores and you just let AI decide with only limited context. I mean, you're
Mhm.
looking at a world where evaluation gets less human.
Mhm.
We've talked about hopes for a much more human version.
Mhm. I
Why
don't,
work with SwiftScore?
I don't necessarily feel like AI makes it less human. I think the way that we're doing it now makes it makes it less human, by not having conversations with people and by just going
Mm,
in, seeing blanket what we see, and then going and writing it up and giving feedback on it. I think is less human than being able to use AI to help keep you focused, to help keep your
mm,
feedback really focused on, district initiatives or things that you're working on. I think that makes it what makes it more meaningful. And then if you're
right,
able to have these conversations about the feedback, then that's what makes it more human. I think what we do with it is what makes it more or less human. So if
right,
you are just like, with the invention of a lot of AI, we have Chat GPT, we have Claude, we have, all of these things. And as soon as principals started using those for evaluation, the biggest thing that you
right.
always hear is it doesn't sound like me. Well, of course not, because it's a it's a computer that's
Yeah, because it's not
creating
you.
this. Like you have to make it sound like you. If you're happy with the feedback, you need to reword it. I mean, it's still work. Using AI, people have to understand is still work. You can't trust everything that it puts out or everything that it says. So you still need to go through and read it and make it yours. And, like I said before, your staff, how feedback is going to be received by different people. You need to take all of that into account when you're looking at using anything AI, and that makes it more human. The fact that you're going
Mm,
in and you're kind of adjusting and refining based on what needs to be in there. I think that there are definitely ways that you can make it less human or more human, and you have to pay careful attention to how you're doing that.
Our friends from Digital Promise on that call that Will mentioned earlier used the phrase, and JC used this phrase, human in the loop. I really like that notion of, you got to have the human in the loop of this whole process. This can be
Right.
used as a tool, right? When the human is in the loop to be very effective. It's when you try to, in a sense, remove the human from that loop where this gets, to Will's point, kind of dangerous. And I think maybe even a step further to say like the professional in the loop, right? The educator who has all this professional knowledge, all
mm,
this context, all of this history, all of this education that they've gone through, their ability to then take that information and to leverage it to help those teachers in a way
Mhm.
that is productive and collaborative and really builds trust. That gets super interesting.
it really does. It really does. And if I'm understanding kind of the core of what you're saying, Kelly, is like you got to trust your team to use it well.
Mhm.
And if you don't trust your team to use it well, there might be other things you need to talk about.
Right. Yep.
You know, sometimes when folks ask us that question, we're like, look, if you think your team is going to just copy and paste the feedback, like, don't use us. By the
I
way,
mean,
they're probably go, Kelly.
oh, sorry.
No, you
The
got it. No, no, no.
um the other piece that I do, can you go back to the last slide?
I can, yeah.
Thank you. Just thinking more about what I was talking about with focus. The thing that I like about the AI from SwiftScore that makes it a little bit um, more elevated than a ChatGPT or a Claude or something like that is I don't have to continually tell SwiftScore that I want a focus on UDL, on Universal Design for Learning,
Mm,
or to focus on the math teacher rubric. I don't have to tell it that because we've already loaded that in. And so knowing what our priorities are as a district to be able to give that to you guys at SwiftScore and have all of our feedback tailored specifically towards our district priorities and what we're working on is invaluable. If I was trying to do that with another AI, any other kind of AI platform, you wouldn't have that same level of integration of what your district priorities are. And I find that extremely helpful when it comes to giving feedback that you want really targeted to what your goals are.
mm, mm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. One of the things that we've tried, and this is a great time to transition to the tool itself.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that we try and think about is there's this first component of, look, if you don't trust your team to use AI, you probably shouldn't work with us. But at the same time, like your team's probably using it. You know
Oh,
what I
they're definitely
mean?
using it.
Like everyone's going to ChatGPT and creating evaluations. I mean, frankly, that was our initial kind of trigger to go into this space. We were
Mhm.
building an ad in the beginning, and somebody had a tool on PlayLab that was like a custom Danielson generator. They
Mhm.
were in Philly, and like 100 people were using it, and nobody marketed it or anything, right?
Yeah.
And the question we had is like, well, if this is happening, is this the right way to do it?
Mhm.
And so the first one is like, all right, is your team can will they have the conversations?
Mhm.
Then it's like if they won't, well, maybe there's some instructional initiative that might be worthwhile there towards how folks are considering and valuing their evaluation process. And
Mhm.
in that, could AI help raise the bar, drive efficiency, and all of those things? And in the development of our tool specifically, we've really thought a lot about how can we keep this research aligned,
Mhm.
um, educator aligned, uh, and something that outputs results that are specific. useful to the context, which is, of course, teacher growth and support. And going directly to Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, whichever it is like, look, I do that generally for work often, right? But its outputs are designed for, or are being there. Those models are being trained on all of the information on the internet,
Right.
you know, not
Right.
the specific context,
Not just to
Um,
education. And I'll tell you, I've done not just in my role now, in previous districts too. I've done a lot of
yeah,
dipsticking on evaluations just to see the calibration and to see how people are doing with
yeah.
it. And since the introduction of AI and people have started really using a lot of those different models to help them with their evaluations, I see a lot of the same feedback. And that's not something that we talked about was that
Mm,
kind of generic copy and paste feedback. Like I saw this lesson and I saw this lesson. I'm going to give both these people the same feedback. And, that happens a lot when I think you're using something like a chat GPT or, not that,
right,
I mean, I use chat, I use that all the time for other,
right,
other things, but
right.
that's, when you're at the district level and you're looking at all your schools and all your principals, what you really want to see is people deserve tailored feedback. And if you're giving the same feedback to multiple people, that's not tailored feedback. Um, and that's not going to be effective.
I'm with you, 100%. This might be a good time to show the platform.
Yes.
Um, this is SwiftScore. We've been doing this work for a little bit more than a year and a half. As Kelly knows, the platform also frequently changes and evolves.
Yes.
This is an ongoing process, frankly.
Malleable product.
AI is so new.
Hmm.
We've taken the changes of AI and the various conversations we've had with folks just like Kelly, and it's really shaped this tool and continues to shape it, um, asking these pressing questions and trying to poke at this problem that we've been discussing for the past 45 minutes. I'll
Hmm.
show you the flow for, let's imagine we are principal. Um, this works for APs, this works for other instructional leaders. We're actually building out our teacher side to the portal to facilitate their own growth and support. I can select if this is an observation, a formative evaluation, or a summative evaluation. We can actually swap these things out depending on what your coaching framework is. We want to align specifically to that. Summatives will pull from multiple past observations and kind of bring them all into one. You can define who you're observing. Teachers are rostered in, and then define the framework. And so I'll put us on the Massachusetts Teacher Educator Evaluation Framework because we're talking in Massachusetts, but we have frameworks across the country. We're ready to upload custom frameworks to specific district. Hey, we use this walkthrough framework. We can upload that too as well. All of that good stuff. We have different components here of the Massachusetts Educator Evaluator framework. We can highlight just one of those specific components if we want. We don't have to create the full observation. And so we can go ahead and do that here. And we can also make this observation scoreless too. If we aren't interested in seeing scores, this is specifically designed for a next step. And you can go into the platform and you could just take notes, right? If you are in fact used to the
This is my
process of, all right,
stenographer
I'm gonna,
page.
yeah, if you're scripting all the stuff, you can write it out all here, right? But one of the things that Kelly mentioned at the beginning is, well, sometimes you're so focused on writing everything down, it's hard to be present with students, develop those relationships, and talk to the teachers, see, interpret in an unbiased way, right? Or I
Mhm.
should say unbiased, everything's biased, but less biased,
Mhm.
more open. Um, and then if you're only able to capture so much when you transcribe, like yourself, uh, the question is like, what's being left out? And is there
Right.
bias there as well? Um, we've built out this transcription feature. So what this can do is capture what's being said in the form of text. So principals, if the principal talks, but primarily teacher and students, you can't play this back. You can't hear voices. There's no like way to get a recording of this.
Mhm.
What it is just putting this in the form of text in a way that's often more accurate than what a human can scribe themselves. Um, it's still not perfect. It might be
Mhm.
better. It's still not perfect. You can still edit this transcription. And as you'll notice, anytime throughout the tool, whenever there's something, it can be edited and should be edited. This is
Mhm.
entirely a human in the loop. And I like to query professional in the loop, right? Um, you can type notes directly in here. I'm going to put some sample notes. This came from a sample of observation notes somebody on the East Coast had. You'll just see this is brief student-teacher interaction, nothing complicated here. This was something that they actually typed out, but again, you could use the transcription feature. We do have other folks who aren't comfortable using the transcription feature, and we're totally fine with that. We can turn that off. A big part of the work that we do is partnering with the district to make this work for them. And then I'm going to go ahead and generate a report. And so one of the things that we've done to, as Kelly mentioned, elevate the feedback is, well, we've done we've built our system on top of Gemini. Um, but the thing is that there's research that shows Gemini alone, when it comes to evaluation, and any of these base models, is about a 65% accuracy. Now, notably, uh, it's not been trained specifically for teacher evaluation. We've built a custom pipeline on top of that that considers different context points, that knows that we're talking about teacher evaluation growth, that's pulling from certain frameworks and best practices, such as like teach like a champion. And
Mhm.
so the way that it works is it will uh, output results with higher fidelity.
Mhm.
And what this will do, I'm going to show you this here, is we did actually research with the World Bank showing that we were 94% accurate when it came to observations and evaluations. So I'm going to get this in here. Looks like I was having a
One of the things that I love about the
Wi-Fi thing.
report is that it gives scores, and that's not something that we had in our evaluation system here. We didn't assign, we assigned teacher ratings because we have to for the state, but we didn't have actual scores. When people see the report, they'll see what I'm talking about. But it takes the different standards and it assigns a score from, is it 1 to 3 or 1 to 4?
1 to 4, but we can do
One
it
to
for 1
4.
to 3 depending on the
Yeah.
framework. Yeah.
And you can change, if SwiftScore gives you a score that you don't agree with, you can change it. It's nothing is set in stone. So you can go in, you can change that score. But to see how they score against the rubric, just to get a score, and you don't even have to incorporate that into your feedback. It doesn't have really much bearing on the feedback that you're giving or how you're doing your evaluation, but it gives you, the evaluator, the ability to see how they scored on certain things, and then it will track their scores over time to see if they're improving, which is also something that we don't have in our evaluation system now. We're not tracking growth over time for teachers. We're just getting our evaluations in without really a metric to show, are people actually improving? And that's huge for us, I think.
Mm, mm. This is it here,
Now, you only
just
have
like you
one
mentioned.
score here because you
Right.
specify that you wanted to focus on teaching all students, which is,
Exactly.
perfectly fine. But if you didn't check that box, then you'd have scores
Yep.
for each of the 4 domains.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And all of this is completely editable too.
Hmm.
So you can change the scores as well. Like this is designed for that human in the loop process. And then each of these subcomponents are going to be paired with feedback.
Hmm.
And so there will be a full report and a conversation starter. And so the full report will
This is
show,
my favorite part.
yeah, the feedback or the full report,
The
the
full
feedback in
report
general.
that has
Yeah,
it's the conversation pieces that's
yeah.
my favorite part.
Let's jump to that then. Tell us what do you like about the conversation
I
part?
love the conversation starter because, as I said before, the feedback and everything is aligned to our district priorities. So I know that it's based
Mm,
on the Mass State frameworks, and I also know that it's based on universal design. So it gives you just some really great questions, topics, things that you can have that follow-up conversation with. The teacher comes in when you're doing a follow-up conversation. It's like, well, how do you think it went? Like that's your starter for, it seems like, all of these conversations. And then
Right.
depending on what the teacher says, it goes from there. But it's just so much more focused. It's really focused on what happened in the classroom, what that feedback was, and things that you can talk about. You can talk about all these things. You can talk about one of these things. You can talk about none of these things. But it
Mm,
gives you a starting point, and it just gives you some really meaty things to talk about with teachers, instead of kind of that surface level, I have to get this, post-observation conversation in. And so, like, how did you think it went? Oh yeah, I think it went well. And then just kind of jumping off from there. This is the meat. This gives you great ideas of things to talk to teachers about.
I'm so glad. These three questions are my favorite as well, especially because they surface stuff that can't be seen otherwise.
Hmm.
You know, we talk about AI, human AI, like frankly, it's AI plus human.
Hmm.
It's AI generating drafts. It's human editing it. When it comes to the conversation, only the human can do it. Like
Right.
AI is not can't have your conversation, right? That's
Right.
not gonna happen. Um,
It can record that, it can transcribe that conversation and make a summary of
yes, it
it.
can. It can. I heard there's a cool company out there doing that work
Yes, I think
with
there is.
Kid Marshall. Yeah. And so that is the other component of this too. So once these questions, this feedback is generated, again, completely editable at all times. It is for all of these different components. Again, I just made it for these three of teaching all students of the Massachusetts
Mhm.
teacher. We can make this non-scored. We can also make it um, for the entire framework, or even just one of these. There's also this dashboard which can show, okay, across my different schools, what are some interesting summative insights, statistics, and across my different teachers, what about that as well? And notably, this is a scored version, but we can make this non-scored. One of the things that we are also releasing is our suite of features specifically for teachers and their growth journey, right? And how can I receive my next steps as a form of support and PD that's aligned to the things that I'm working on,
Mhm.
almost in the same way we're talking about, differentiated and personalized instruction for students, right? And how can we do this in a way that it's not gotcha, you
Mhm.
know? And so that's something that we're developing actively with um,
I'm very excited
teachers
to
as
see
well.
that,
Yeah,
side.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I can say that you guys, I can give you a big thank you and let you know. I mean, SwiftScore has been amazing to work with. Our people reach out to them constantly, and they are right back, like immediate, immediate back to, someone's having a technical issue or has a question, they're immediate answers to whatever you need. And they take feedback, they give feedback well, but they take feedback well. So they take a lot of feedback from us and, from other people about what is going to improve the platform, and they act on it right away. And, we see some of those changes come out, and it's exciting to be involved in something that is evolving and changing. And, it's exciting to be part of something that's new and evolving like that.
Thanks, Cal. I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit, close us out here. We got what you're seeing at Dudley, actually. Give us a give us a hope looking forward. What
So
what what do you hope to see?
my hope moving forward, I have a short-term goal and a long-term goal. My
Yeah.
short-term goal is to have everybody using the platform regularly for consistency, for efficiency, and for equity.
Mm,
Those three things are important to me, and I think that I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
yeah.
And then my long-term goal is to be able to get to a place where this is freeing up people to have those conversations. That is my ultimate goal, is that we're having more face-to-face conversations based on observations and evaluation.
Right.
That would be my long
And,
term.
and it's almost like we know it's happening.
Hmm.
We want to make sure it's happening consistently at
Right.
scale across evaluation cycles in more depth, and then the results of that, right?
And I'm really positive that we'll get there. People need to
Yeah.
build some fluency with the platform. They need to build, a comfort level with it and get used to using that. But I mean, when you're thinking about using other platforms for evaluation, it's like you have your evaluation system that you're using that houses all your paperwork. And then you're going outside of that to put it into like a chat GPT or something, another model, and then having to come
Yeah.
back to, it's a lot of cut and paste and
Right.
flipping between tabs and stuff that you don't have to do. And
Yeah.
so building that building in that comfort level and that fluency with the program, I think once we're there and our principals and evaluators are really comfortable with it, then that's when we're going to start making moves for the conversations.
Mm, mm.
And it's
One of the
not
nice things.
difficult to use. So, building fluency in that is not going to be difficult.
Mm, I'm glad to hear. Yeah. One of the things too about the conversation starter, which is actually releasing this week, is you can see the number of conversations that are had.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you're, and that's interesting for a teacher, principal, or
Hmm. Or me.
assistant superintendent, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's, like are we talking more? Because
Yep.
frankly, it's really it's all about trust.
Yes.
Um, I'll close this out here with kind of two final things. But with regards to the trust, Corey, if you put us to the next slide here, um, we were in Arizona for a conference. We're talking to a bunch of um, different superintendents actually getting feedback and showing the tool and all that stuff. And one of them shared, I shared with them, look, I'll give you one of my hopes is my hope is I want to continue working more with teachers and
Hmm.
particularly unions, how to have the conversation, um, you know, how can we approach this moment as a way in which we can partner together and ensure that the right people are at the table to deliver solutions that serve all stakeholders, as opposed to going outside to other AI that
Hmm.
isn't allowed but is being used, right? And
Right.
so I mentioned this to them, and I was like, and I've mentioned some of the work we've begun to do in that realm. And we were just talking about how can we continue to improve SwiftScore with the teacher in mind. One of the things that they said to us was, um, well, veteran teachers, A, themselves want to get better,
Hmm.
but also they want to make sure everyone else gets better too.
Hmm.
Like, and that was really interesting to me because it's really like, look, if we do this right, we're on the same boat team.
Yes.
The kids that you have now very well might be the kids I have next year,
Hmm.
and are the people that are going to grow up and be in our community, right? And like uh, the kind of the great mistake of evaluation and how we got here is it became like a us them gotcha thing, right? But the reality is, it's like, well, we all come to the same place to teach the same group of people. Um, and so my hope is to continue that work and drive that trust across different groups here.
Hmm.
It's 3 o'clock, and I just want to close on one final thing. We are doing this work as part of a national reimagining teacher evaluation cohort with the University of Pennsylvania. We will be measuring the impact of this, principal efficiency, relational trust, and teacher growth. Um, it's a way for folks to engage in this, test the waters. If you're interested in that at all, you could just pull up your phone and scan this QR code here. It would put us in touch with a crazy guy named Jesse Lieb, uh, who I promise is cool and fun. And but
He
if you're
likes to
interested in
call me
learning
at
more
seven
and speak
o'clock in the
to
morning, though.
him.
He is an early
uh,
riser, isn't
He's always trying to get me because he can never get me.
he?
but but yeah, if you're interested in talking, we're here to talk. And if you have any thoughts or questions, please reach out via email. Thanks, Corey, for hosting us here.
Absolutely. We'll leave this up on the screen for a second. Kelly, thank you. Will, thank
Yes.
you again. For us at Rocket PD, I think like as we're hearing these conversations about how technology is evolving and AI is evolving, the way that educators learn and do is evolving too. In a lot of ways, I feel like learning and doing are starting to become sort of one continuous motion. And that's what we hear in our community is people invariably come to us to learn about something, teacher evaluation in this case. And as your brain starts working, as you start talking with other people, as you start collaborating in your district, you start asking really pointed questions about how do we do this better or different? And if we can do one thing at Rocket PD to help you, we believe it really is surfacing some of those ideas, bringing people like Kelly and others into the conversation to talk about what they're doing and to give you some ways forward, whatever you choose to do, at least to have some information to guide you in the right direction. So thank you both for your time. I really appreciate all of you being here today. I hope you'll consider scanning the QR code and talking to Jesse for a couple of minutes if this interests you. And
I highly
we'll do
recommend it.
another one of these real, yeah, right. Not at 7 a.m. We'll see.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do another one of these real soon. So please stay tuned. Thank you all very much.